Hey everyone. So, right now all I'm doing is just going over a list of movies coming out this year that I'm anticipated to watch, as well as marking it down with all the other films that came out this year that I already saw. So let's take a look at what we got. Let's see, we got a horror film. There's a horror film. We got a horror film. Let's see what's coming up. Oh, look at that. Another horror film. Like I said, this year is just all filled with horror films. Every year of this decade so far has just been filled with lots of horror movies, and I've seen as many as I could. Yeah, horror has just been the top genre of the decade, as I pointed out. And so naturally, there's going to be a lot of horror films I'm watching this year. And it doesn't stop here. No, there's a couple more coming out that I'm ready to see, so be prepared. Might as well just turn into the Jack Rodak horror review. Anywho, this horror movie I'm going to be reviewing is a sequel to a series of films that's usually considered one of the most popular horror franchises of all time. That, of course, being the Conjuring universe. What some would say is sort of like a franchise for horror films in the same manner of the MCU for superhero movies. Okay, maybe people don't go that far, but it is a pretty big expanding universe of horror films that's probably one of the most popular franchises of our time. Naturally, of course, you can see why. The Conjuring is a series of supernatural horror films that revolve around different scary, haunted subjects, whether it's a haunted house, a creepy doll, or nuns. And really, now, two of those have already been done multiple times. I don't know if there's any nun stories out there I know of, but regardless, there is something to its popularity. I'm not against it at all, but let me go ahead and share the story of how I feel about this franchise. When I got to seeing the first Conjuring movie about 1 or 2 years ago, I thought to myself, this is fine. This works fine enough. Although I don't know if I really call it a masterpiece of horror. Yeah, I didn't really see the first Conjuring movie as anything that spectacular. It was a good movie, but it didn't creep me out or intrigue me enough to understand the popularity of it. And so much so, from that point, I just did not feel like watching the sequels. I knew it was a big franchise. I just didn't feel like I'd be in the mood to check it out. However, this is mostly the case for most sequels. It's pretty much what happens with every sequel that comes out. When I heard about this one coming out this year and heard that it's going to be presumably the final installment in the Conjuring series, don't know if it's going to be the final installment in the overall universe, but in terms of these Conjuring movies, it is supposed to be the finale, I think. Knowing that was coming out, I thought, maybe I should try this out. So I decided to revisit the Conjuring and go ahead and see as many of the sequels as I could. So I saw the second Conjuring movie, which I found to be just as good as the first one. I saw the third one, which was not as good, but decent enough, I guess. It was fine. And then I went ahead and checked out some of the spin-offs. Annabelle, I didn't like it. The second Annabelle, better, but still not great. And from that point, I still need to watch the Nun films. I heard those weren't good, but still, gotta check them out if I want to get into the series. Anywho, now with the new one out. This new Conjuring movie is supposed to be the final installment in the Conjuring series. Like I said, I'm still not 100% sure if it's going to be the final film in the overall Conjuring universe, but it is an anticipated horror movie, I guess, maybe. I don't know how many people were anticipating it, but I took the knee and felt, sure, why not? I'll go see it. What did I think of it? How does it work? Is it good? Let me say it. First, of course, let's go ahead and examine this film's genres. Yes, there are genres I have to talk about, and there are three of them: horror, mystery, and thriller. The three genres that's pretty much kept with every single film in this Conjuring franchise. Not just the Conjuring movies, the entire universe of Conjuring of films in this franchise have really only had those three genres. That's pretty much the staple for this franchise. And of course, it's not a bad combo. It's probably one of the most unique, most popular combos for a movie. You have horror, you have mystery, and you got thriller. That's pretty much what every horror movie nowadays would have. But anywho, let's go ahead and examine each of these genres and how they work. Let's start with the mystery. What's that like in this movie? Well, the movie is a mystery. It's these journalists who are pretty much journalizing with the haunted houses. You have journalists that handle things like police crime stories or I don't know, anything they see in their life. This movie involves journalists who examine scary supernatural stuff happening in their house and in other houses too. And that's what the mystery goes in this movie. Why it's happening, what it does, what exactly is it doing? Why is it doing that? Only like less than half of those are answered in this movie. There are still lots of questions this movie leaves to us, which then I know is probably the intent. You know, not every question needs to get answered. So we learn through this movies of what happens, and we sort of learn what the supernatural elements can do. But what isn't answered is why it's doing that, nor do they really answer why it's been affecting their match the most as opposed to other families out there. Or nor does it really answer, will it ever go away? Those are things that we have to leave as sort of a mystery. And I'll give credit, that's not a bad thing to go with. That being said, I do feel like it could have maybe had a little bit to those answers. I know not all mystery movies need to answer all their questions. I guess that's what the point of a mystery film is, to have some questions answered, but leave others in the shadows and have us just think about it for the rest of the time so we can, have something to think about with this movie. I just feel like they kind of chose the wrong ones to not answer. I'm perfectly fine with the idea of the logic behind this happening because it is pretty confusing logic. But I feel like they could have maybe explored more of why it chooses them, like what's their calling for it. We don't really get much of that in this film. I know you could argue maybe that's just something that dates back all the way to the first Conjuring movie, but from what I remember, this is just some terrifying events that occur. And for how it goes on for all these movies, I feel like there needs to be more to explain why it's continuing and what else it's trying to prove itself for. That's not really explained. And most people have grown to accept that, enjoy the mystery. But I, for one, feel like that's something that this movie could really try to maybe work better with doing. You can have things that make no sense. I mean, the overall haunted house stuff they have makes no sense. But still, a little explanation on what their purpose is to all this, or like why they're chosen, I feel like could have been explored in this movie a little more. And I just feel like that's something that would have made this story not as awkward. Thriller. Now let's talk about the thriller, the suspense this movie has. To be fair, it is a bit more the suspense in this movie is probably better than the suspense we got in the last Conjuring movie. That's a faulty comparison, I guess, but in a way, that's probably the best I can compare it to. Better than the first two Conjuring movies, that's debatable. Let me just say how it is on its own. The suspense is not bad. It's pretty good, I'll say. It's jump scares, most part, but what I love is that it's the kind of jump scares that are actually jump scares. Scares that actually have a purpose. Like I mentioned before, I hate those horror movies that like to do those jump scares that at times are pointless. Like, you get a big jump and you're like, oh shit, and it's just, haha, I'm fucking with you. And it's just, I don't know, man. I feel like that's really taking it's really not going to our right mood. I just feel like they kind of need to have the right time for these jump scares. I don't like that they're doing that. Some movies like to do them for fun. I mean, you can do them for fun, but there still has to be a purpose. And that's what I gotta thank this movie for. It gives every jump scare a purpose. I don't think there was one jump scare in this movie that was just people screwing with people. It was simple time, Regardless, I do think that, for the most part, other than the improvement of jump scares, that's really about it. The rest of the suspense comes from, I guess, I don't know how much longer the story's gonna run. And that's not really something I would talk about with a thriller movie. I'm not gonna compliment the movie's thrills by saying how long the movie is. So really the only thing I can think about when talking about the suspense is how its jump scares work. And they work pretty good. Granted, there didn't need to be as many as there were. I feel like maybe just having one or maybe two in the movie would be fine, but there were a couple more than needed. But at the same time, they worked when they did, and yeah, even though this movie even though that's really the only suspense I can get out of this movie, it was good. They were good. So if you're one who enjoys jump scares for some reason, thankfully this movie will provide them to you in a proper manner. But now let's go ahead and talk about the main factor of this movie, the horror. How does this work as a horror movie? The same way it does with the other Conjuring movies. Yep, that's all I have to say. The horror in this movie is about as scary as it was in the other two Conjuring films, the other three Conjuring movies. It's good, but it could be better. That's sort of the case here. It's really good horror because every sense of horror that you see in a movie, you will get here. There's violence, there's, like I mentioned, jump scares, there's creepy faces, and yes, there is a sense of terror with what's happening and such. At the same time, though, the kind of horror that makes you feel scared because this could be something that happens to you, that's not there with these movies. No, these movies, I feel like these movies are trying their hardest to make us scared that these things could occur with us. Especially since apparently these are based off true events. I'll talk about that later when we get to the story, but more so, a part of me feels like they're trying to give us that kind of fear that this is going to be something that we could get scared of happening to us. I don't really buy with that with these movies. I get scared when it comes to how I don't know where the creepy faces are, or like what will happen, why the doll's moving or whatever. Other than that, though, it's still in a sense just that sense of horror. The horror in this movie is pretty good, but it's not up there with other great horror films that we've gotten so far. So that's just what I would say. I'd say as a horror movie, this is pretty good, but as a horror flick, in general, it's really not something I could compare with some of the other greats. So if I'm talking about horror classic, when I bring up movies like The Exorcist, Halloween, The Thing, or Scream, I don't know if I really put The Conjuring in that category. And I am still talking about the first Conjuring, which is usually considered the best and most fun, popular one. But still, I don't think I would put that there. And with this movie's horror working in the same manner, it does mean it's a little weaker. But only a little bit. I think it still works almost about as well as the other Conjuring. I think every Conjuring movie has the same enjoyment of horror aspect in it. It's just not an amazing aspect. It's pretty good horror, but not the kind of horror I brag about. Just saying. Okay, now onto this film's story. Like I mentioned, these movies are supposed to be based off of true events. Now, when I heard about that, every movie opens by saying that they're based off true events. I sometimes like to call bullshit. I'm not a history expert. I can't dispute it, but I just could not believe that these supernatural elements are occurring. It actually occurred. Like, everything that happens in these movies, I just think, no, that did not happen in real time. I thought they were just playing that card the same way that the Coen brothers did with Fargo. Because, Fargo said it was based off a true story, but it wasn't. However, the one thing this movie does have to try to prove itself to be actually a true story is that in the end credits, every end credits these movies show real footage of what happened in the past, trying to show that this stuff did happen and they're not screwing with us. So, from a sense, you could argue that, yeah, maybe they really are based off of true events. However, I do still think that a lot of stuff that happens in these films was made up. Maybe the overall structure of the story is a true event, but some of the elements they threw at us, yeah, no. I refuse to believe that those were real. I'm not saying that because I want to protect myself. I don't want to scare myself. No, I'm brave. If they really did happen, I'd be brave about it, but they didn't. All right, let's just talk about what the story is for this one. About the same kind of manner as the other Conjuring movies. It's a haunted house. A house that does terrorizing things and such. That's pretty much what it is with these movies. They all focus on just a new setup for this haunted house. It's just new things to happen. It's like with the Final Destination films. They're all sort of in their own separate realm of having the same structure, just with different little elements. That being said, the difference is that with this movie, the two main characters from the first movie always come back for the next ones. and they just had to experience these things over and over. In the first movie, they had this haunted house experience to them. In the second film, they got to investigate another haunted house in another country. In the third one, they had to deal with this mess again with new manners and their own daughter that had to put up with it more. And now in this case, we have a new structure. What's this like? Well, their daughter is engaged, I guess, sort of, and there's a lot of other people involved in this house, so they pretty much get terrorized too, and that's it. Those are the two main new elements for this film. More people involved, the daughter's engaged, and then we have all this stuff happening. I'm not gonna say that the story in this movie is bad. It's not. Because when looking at it on its own, I do have to try to see how it works in that case. And I'll give these movies credit. They do a pretty good job at still making the story work pretty well, even if they all feel like they're just going in the same route. Because they do add new elements to each thing. We still got the same structure. We got creepy demons, the Annabelle doll, but we do get sort of new things happen with these movies. In this one, there are some things, like I mentioned, are kind of pretty scary. Like, the daughter gets possessed around the end of the film, which, granted, isn't really anything that new, but is pretty terrifying. They have to experience this terrifying mirror that seems to be creating trouble. I think that's probably what the big element is, the mirror. But that they try to destroy that in the end. It just creates more damage before it is finally destroyed. And really, that's what our elements are. We have all those elements mixed in with a structure that just feels the same. So, in my opinion, the story in this movie is decent. It's just the reason it's not great is because I'm not really getting that much of a new vibe to it. I feel like I'm just watching the same setup with a few new added things. Now, of course, that's what it was with the Final Destination movies, and I praise those. The only difference is with those movies, they do follow new characters. Like, the first movie had this setup of characters, and the second one had another set of characters. They're all different people. So we know that there's different people who get involved with this stuff, and they all are different routes. Like, in one movie, there'd be a plane crash that results in different deaths, and another, it'd be a car crash of log trucks causing mess. So yeah, they'll just go with different things. This movie sort of goes with different things, but it's very small little things. That's what I feel like. I feel like the additions that they have in this movie are too small. I guess you could maybe the amount of people that have to be involved in this terrorizing house is kind of a big step up, but they still don't give it enough depth to make it feel like a new kind of scary. I just still seem to get the same vibes that I got from the other films. I mean, it's the Conjuring movies, so you're supposed to get the same vibes, but I mean, like, I don't really get any new terror. Like, I'm not really seeing something that's like, oh, wow, I've never seen that before. So I don't know. I just feel like that's okay. I guess what it's doing is trying to give us depth that it's based on a true story. Because this movie opens saying that too. This is based on true events, and that's kind of what we got there. There are some interesting elements. Like there's a scene where they appear with Larry King. I couldn't tell if that was in the filming manifest that was green screening, or they got a different actor to play Larry King, or they did that stupid de-aging thing. I don't know. All I know is that this movie pretty much tries to set its time more and set up lots of new gimmicks. So in that regard, I seem to be really criticizing this story. But let me just say, because of how scary some of the stuff is, and because of the fact that there are those new elements and they do have some new attention in them, the story is still passable. It's not great, but it's passable. More so, that's probably what I have to say about this movie in general. It's alright. The Conjuring Last Rites is a decent film. As a finale to this franchise, it's definitely not incredible finale. You're not going to get the same hype as you would for Avengers Endgame or something like that. It's just a pretty decent horror film, and it's definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of these Conjuring movies. I mean, if you're a Conjuring watcher, you probably will already watch this movie no matter what I say. But if you're into horror in general, would you like this movie? I mean, depends on how you felt about the other films. If you thought the other Conjuring movies were good, then you probably will enjoy going to see this movie. But if you're someone who sort of doesn't see them as amazing horror films like I did, or like how I said it and sees as amazing horror films, if you feel that same manner, then it's back or forth with this movie. You'll either like it about as much as the other films, or you'll have a hatred for it. Me, I like it about as much as how I feel about this franchise in general. Just decent. My opinion on this movie is pretty much the same opinion I have about the franchise in general. Now, granted, I still need to watch the Nun movies. Those are the only movies left that I haven't seen yet. I heard those were crappy, so I'm probably gonna get more negative about this series. But for now, let's just regarding with the Conjuring films on their own, that it's a decent franchise, and this was a decent movie. 6 out of 10. I recommend it to those who were a big fan of the Conjuring films. I wouldn't recommend it to those who are not a fan of the Conjuring movies and are expecting top class horror. Because there are some top class horror movies that we've gotten this year, and there are some coming out soon that look like they could be top class too. So yeah, you'll be getting a lot more reviews coming from me that are horror films, and I will share my expense of how I am with these horror movies, with how I act. So if you don't want to hear me gush about how much I love watching horror films, then you're probably gonna not want to stick around too much with a lot of these reviews I got. Every once in a while there will be a non-horror review, but at this point it's gonna be horror movie, regular movie, horror movie. Horror movie and regular movie are just two different separate things at this point.